Thank you, Ali. Okay. If I do that, can everyone see the screen in full picture? Great. Cool. Awesome. Let's see here. If folks, let me see. Oh, here we go. I hit the wrong button. If folks would like, go ahead and since we have a larger group, we won't necessarily do introductions for everyone. But when I was looking at the roster of guests today, it's great to see some folks based here in Southern Oregon where our office is, but I also saw people from Texas, Tennessee, Virginia, the Southwest. So if you'd like to in the box, just so people know who they're in this space with, feel free to share your name, where you're tuning in from, and then maybe a favorite roadless area or one that you're familiar with. And then we'll go ahead and jump into this. So as folks are sharing what they have in the chat box, if you've got questions, go ahead and plug them in there. Again, Ali is with me from KS Wild. She'll be monitoring the chat box. We will save some time towards the end for question and answers. So hopefully there's some discussion sparked here. But first and foremost, my name is Michael Dotson. I am the executive director of the Klamath-Siskiyou Wildland Center. I see a lot of familiar faces on here, but if you're joining us and learning about us for the first time, KS Wild is what we often go by. But the Klamath-Siskiyou Wildland Center is focused here in Southwest Oregon as well as Northwest California. And so we protect and restore wild nature in this part of the world, one of the most biodiverse landscapes we have in North America. And I think for those of you that have visited here or live here, you probably know about the special places we have. This is a region that is characterized by two large watersheds. One in Southwest Oregon is the the Rogue River. And then in Northern California, we have the expansive Klamath River watershed, which includes the Salmon, the Scott, the Trinity Rivers. And so, all in all, we focus on about 8 million acres of federal land. And in total, there's about 11 million acres of federal land here in the Klamath-Siskiyou. And in short, what we do is we promote science-based land and river conservation through policy, community action. We'll talk a lot today about one of the big policies, the roadless area, or the roadless rule. And then, as just sort of a brief mission statement, we're here to protect forests, safeguard clean water, and preserve wildlife. I think this is I'm going to go through a few slides today for all of you that just kind of gives a brief outline of the agencies that manage public lands. So we'll do a big picture and scale down to more of the regional focus and see how this new roadless rule rescission would impact landscapes around here. But first and foremost, we have three main public land agencies. The National Park Service, something you're probably all familiar with. There's around 85 million acres of public lands with national parks. And the ones closest to us would be Crater Lake, Oregon Caves National Monument out there in Cave Junction, and then also the Redwood National Park over there in the northern California coast. We also have the Bureau of Land Management. This is the largest land management agency. It's also part of the U.S. Department of Interior. And around in Southwest Oregon, we have the BLM that manages a lot of forest lands, whereas the BLM is usually in the Intermountain West, where there's a bit more of the juniper woodlands, but also a lot of scrub and shrubs. And then we also have the U.S. Forest Service, and that's going to be the focus today of our talk, the roadless rule rescission, the rollback, and roadless areas are really U.S. Forest Service landscapes at risk. The BLM does have roadless areas, but it's part of a different agency. So this rule we're talking about really has to do with the 154 or so national forests we have nationwide, which all in all is about 188 million acres. And this is just a quick little map of the entire country because we do have folks tuning in, I think, from all over. But the area in black, these are all of our national forests. And so you can see the vast majority of states have national forests. There are places like Iowa, Kansas, North Dakota, and a few of the Atlantic states that lack national forest landscapes. But this is really an agency that is nationwide, up into Alaska as well as down in Puerto Rico. And this again is just showing you where the national forests are located. Something that I just briefly talked to you about, a little sidebar here. But I encourage people, if something like this, where the National Forest or the U.S. Forest Service is of interest to you, this is a book I picked up this summer. Timothy Egan, I think it was about 2015, wrote this book about the big burn of Idaho and Montana back a little over 100 years ago. And it's a really great historical account of the early days of the Forest Service, and especially Gifford Pinchot and his relationship with folks like John Muir and Teddy Roosevelt and other power players at the time. And what I took from this is that as much as we've seen a lot of forest management advance in the last century, I think the politics around public lands is still somewhat similar. Maybe not a lot has changed, as many of us probably witnessed recently with the public land sell-off. We still have folks, I think, out there that want to hand our public lands over to industry and developers. And I think just focusing back in on our local region here, what are the local public lands we're talking about? So again, KS Wild's focused on Southwest Oregon and Northwest California. And in Oregon, we monitor the Rogue River Siskiyou National Forest. This is a big, sprawling national forest that goes all the way from Curry County on the southern Oregon coast, across Josephine, Jackson, and then all the way up towards the boundary of Crater Lake, which is Klamath County. So the Rogue River Siskiyou is sort of a U-shaped national forest that goes from all the way from Gold Beach up to Prospect there in the High Cascades. We also focus on the BLM districts down here. There's about 1 million acres of BLM forests here in Southwest Oregon, a lot of them for timber emphasis. So that's where a lot of our time is spent. And then lastly, in California, this little northwest corner, we're focused on 3 national forests there. That's the Klamath National Forest, which is just south of us on the border with Oregon. The Six Rivers, that's where the redwoods are. That's the Smith River National Recreation Area, if all of you have been over there. And then farther south towards Mount Shasta and areas like Dunsmuir, we have the Shasta Trinity National Forest. So all in all, these regions encompass about 8 million acres of public land, which it's really the geography that KS Wild covers. And just interspersed throughout all this, I just want to make sure we're all also just visualizing what these places are. They're special. One of my favorite places in the Rogue River Siskiyou National Forest is this stretch of swimming holes over on the Elk River. If you've been up out of Port Orford, great salmon fishing on the Elk, but also in the summertime, we have excellent watering holes over there to go swimming. And this is one of my favorite spots, about 10 miles or so upriver from where 101 is, just north of Port Orford. This takes a little closer view. I want to just share with you all, this takes a closer view of what we're talking about with these public lands. And this color coordination is helpful because it shows you just exactly how these lands are utilized. Of course, whether it's the Forest Service or the BLM, these are multi-use landscapes. And what I mean by multi-use is that they were set aside for the public, for recreation, for conservation, but also resource extraction. And that resource extraction for us in these neck of the woods is largely timber, and it's been that way for a long time. We'll also, if you follow KS Wild, you also know there's other smaller mining threats, but a lot of times we're talking about resource extraction here in the KS. We're talking about logging and logs and timber. And what this shows you is the dark green on the map. You see these big blocks of green. There's several of them. These are the wilderness areas. These are congressionally designated wilderness areas. That means they went through Congress, signed by both houses and signed by the president. And so this is a stretch of wilderness areas that date back to 1968. And then you can see other spots. This lighter green is what we call administratively withdrawn. When we talk about roadless areas today, this is one of those landscapes. This light green areas, these are the roadless areas. They're not wilderness, but they're quasi-wilderness because we don't have them developed to the extent of these other landscapes. And so where you see a lot of the brown and that color, that's more of where we're looking at working forests. The BLM, the Forest Service, is focused on those landscapes for sustainable forestry, or what they would call sustainable forestry. And you can see that landscape is quite broad from the Rogue Valley. A lot of that checkerboard you see is the BLM, whereas when you see the colors a bit more dense and concentrated, those are going to be your Forest Service landscapes. And the next couple of maps just kind of show you and highlight exactly what we're talking about when we talk about roadless areas. Again, wilderness areas, they're roadless. There's trails into them, there's access, but really we're limiting the development there because we want those landscapes to function in a natural manner. And so, from the Grassy Knob and Wild Rogue, which are a bit more coastal, down to the Trinity Alps, which is high montane, with I think maybe one of California's last remaining glaciers, is down the Trinity Alps. So these are some really popular places for us to go hike. You'll hear of groups like the Siskiyou Mountain Club. I know some folks associated with SMC are here. And groups like SMC are doing great work in a lot of these landscapes, opening up old trails and making sure we have access to some of these beautiful remote landscapes. And then what I wanted to show you really is what we're talking about today, roadless areas. So while congressionally designated wilderness areas are roadless, there are still more than 58 million acres of national forests that are roadless, but not designated as wilderness. And this is a great map. I highly recommend folks, you can go to the Outdoor Alliance. They have a great nationwide interactive map where you can hone in on various landscapes and see just where we're talking about with these roadless areas at threat. What's interesting is you'll see these spots like this around here where it says Siskiyou National Forest. That is the Kalmiopsis Wilderness. And so on the outside of that wilderness area, you can see the additional roadless areas. And so what we're talking about really is an extension of wilderness areas. And there's the Kalmiopsis up here in Southwest Oregon. This big block of roadless areas here in the middle of the map, that's called the Kangaroo Roadless Area. And that's really the landscape that's adjacent to the Red Buttes. If you ever go out into the Red Buttes and explore that area. And then down here, you'll see this other big block concentrated around, and that would be the Trinity Alps. So again, a lot of these roadless areas could be considered extensions of wilderness in our region. And then also, along with Outdoor Alliance's nationwide interactive map, our partners at Oregon Wild have also created an Oregon-based map. So I just wanted to show you all, for those of you that are more oriented to other parts of Oregon, this is the roadless area landscape in our state. And you'll see the big block in Southwest Oregon is the Kalmiopsis. We've got quite a bit there west of Bend in the Sisters area. And then, of course, bigger blocks up there in the Wallowas and in northeastern Oregon. And so these are these landscapes, again, about 2 million acres in Oregon are considered roadless and at risk with this current roadless area rescission effort. And yeah, I think the next handful of slides I just want to make sure folks are aware of what we're talking about and information about how to comment, how to get engaged, Q&A, and then hopefully you all feel prepared to maybe submit comments or even just sign our petition. But briefly, the 2001 Roadless Rule, what is it? It was established to prohibit, it established prohibitions on road reconstruction, road construction, and commercial timber harvesting. There was definitely an effort back towards the end of the Clinton administration where we had Forest Service personnel highlighting the importance of these landscapes being undeveloped. And so a rulemaking effort was undertaken by the agency back then to figure out ways of balancing that multi-use mandate. And this roadless rule came about then in 2001. Believe it or not, there are exceptions that exist for access. If you have a private inholding, like a cabin, you're allowed to go in there. If there's if there's, on the edge of the roadless area, there's a road. Mineral leases. One of the things we're learning a lot about with this current rescission effort is that it's not as much about mining as it is about logging. And so if you currently have mining leases or mineral leases, you have access to that in a roadless area. And believe it or not, we actually do have active forest management on a limited basis. But you can do prescribed fire, you can do helicopter thinning in roadless areas. So there are ways already that the agencies have these exceptions to make sure they're doing what they can in appropriate ways in roadless areas. And something I've learned, I was not doing this work 24, 25 years ago when the first rule came out. Maybe many of you were. But a lot of the things I'm reading about was at the time of this scoping period in 2000, the roadless rule was overwhelmingly popular and it had garnered the most comments ever for a public comment period at the time. So it just goes to show you back then how important it was. And even today, especially if you're using some social media, the last couple of weeks, this is one of those issues we've seen get a lot of traction, not with our forest defenders and river enthusiasts, but also hunters, fishing folks who also enjoy that access to roadless areas. And at the same time, what the Trump administration is doing right now, what the USDA is doing right now, is nothing new. The latest attempt is just what we think is sort of rehashing old arguments. I would encourage folks, I'm going to go ahead and hop out of this screen sharing for a minute, and hopefully you can still see my screen, but I want to share a couple of websites that folks can dig in a little deeper. And one of them is Earth Justice. Can everyone see the Earth Justice screen that I'm on right now? No. Okay. Maybe I should go back.
No, Michael, we're not able to see it.
What do you see, Ali? Is it just
We see
black?
your presentation.
Oh, you do. Interesting. Okay. So let me just go back to the presentation. Can you still see the presentation?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, thanks. Okay. We'll just stay there.
Okay.
But I think the easiest way to describe this to you all is that Earth Justice has a really great timeline. It's quite long, actually, that dates back to 1998 when the first lawsuits came about against the roadless rule. And I think just to synthesize what that timeline is about is that despite repeated attacks against the roadless rule, we have had federal courts uphold the basic structure of the roadless rule, and that's good news. We'll learn a little bit later on that there were some states that chose to do their own statewide rules, and that's a little different. But overall, Earth Justice has quite the comprehensive timeline of all the different lawsuits and efforts and petitions to try to roll back the roadless rule, but they've failed. And what we're hoping that happens again in this instance. And then hopefully you all have seen the screen advance. But I just want to kind of get down to brass tacks in terms of what is the Trump administration proposing to do. And a lot of this comes from two executive orders that were published back in the springtime, and both have to do with timber and timber extraction. One is called EO 14092, which the Trump administration has titled Unleashing Prosperity Through Deregulation. And the other one is very much targeted towards America's timber industry and declaring an economic emergency for the need for domestic production of more timber. One of the things I think that we'll get to at the end as we talk about how to comment and tips for that is whenever there's an announcement like this, there's a comment period by an agency. What they have to do is go through a formal process and publish that. And those formal announcements are made in what's called the Federal Register. And so the Federal Register notice is one of those things where if you're going to comment, it's really important to note what it says, because that's what gives you all the information as to the reasoning behind why they're proposing this, what they plan to do with alternatives or proposed actions, and then actually the instructions for how to comment. So after this is over with, I think what Ali and I will probably be able to do for all of you is just to send you a follow-up that includes some of these links, since you're not seeing them on my screen, to make sure you all are aware of these various resources out there to help you understand what it takes to make good comments. Little sidebar again, one of my favorite roadless areas in the very tip top of Northwest California, the North Fork Smith Inventory Roadless Area. You might hear us talk about IRAs today, or you might hear of an IRA in the Forest Service. An IRA stands for Inventoried Roadless Area, and that's these landscapes, which again are destinations for a lot of us to go backpacking, hiking, but also in places like this where you get to run a really beautiful Class 4 river. And so this was a trip I took a couple of years ago with the Six Rivers National Forest and some other conservation groups. We're part of a forest collaborative down there. And so every few years we try to bring ourselves together and do a fun little trip and kind of go beyond just some of the hard conversations and enjoy the public lands we all love so much. And so if you've ever had a chance to do some exciting whitewater, you want to do some exciting whitewater in a roadless area, highly recommend the North Fork Smith, which is about 2 or so hours southwest of here from Ashland. If you read the Roadless Rule in the Federal Register, the rescission, there's quite a lot of details, but I just wanted to bring up for all of you some of the basics and what we're talking about here. The rollback targets about 44 million acres of roadless areas. I told you all that there have been numerous lawsuits over the years. And because of that, we do actually have a couple of statewide or state level rules that Idaho and Colorado crafted that were approved. And so this rescission of the roadless rule is not going to include forests in Idaho or Colorado because they have other separate amended rules. But this is definitely going to take, it'll go after roadless areas in Washington, Oregon, California, Arizona, Nevada, Montana, Wyoming, even roadless areas in Vermont. There's a few folks we work with up there, Sierra Club staff and some other groups that have roadless areas in Vermont as well. So again, this is an effort to roll back protections for about 44 million acres nationwide of the roadless areas. And what the USDA and Forest Service is proposing, if any of you are familiar with forest management planning, you often know they might provide 3, 4, maybe sometimes 5 different alternatives. What do we want to consider and why? But we're right now at a moment where this administration does not really seem all that keen on giving us options. It's all or nothing in this case. And so the Federal Register has made it very clear that they'll have 2 considerations, 2 alternatives. One is keep the roadless rule as it is, or two, fully repeal it. And I think we all probably know which way they're going to lean, which makes public comment even more essential. And then to also demonstrate, I think, how little the public matters to this administration, this is a 21-day comment period. When we first heard about this back in June, everyone thought it would be just 2 weeks. And so that's extremely short, especially when you consider we just did a comment period for the Northwest Forest Plan amendment where there was 120 days. And so here we have a 21-day comment period, and the comments are due September 19th. So that's next Friday, which makes it very convenient that we're having this today. And so I appreciate everyone being here last minute in terms of getting caught up on what's happening. And I want to point out just sort of where we're at with this. Um, Maybe something you did or didn't know, but the Forest Service is responsible for managing about 2.5 times the miles of roads in our own US highway system. So, we have county, we have state roads, there's millions of miles of roads. But when it comes to the Federal Highway Administration and federal highways, they manage about 160,000 miles of roads. The U.S. Forest Service at this point manages more than 380,000 miles of roads, whether it's logging or other access. So it just kind of goes to show you the scale of how much we've developed our forests already and what the agency is responsible for doing. This is something we'll get into later on. But as you can tell, this picture to me and to my colleagues at KS Wild demonstrates the problem we're facing. The existing road system is already failing. This is down in the, I think, the southern part of the Klamath National Forest. This was a road that blew out after a fire came through and some heavy rains. This is a road we've been encouraging the agency to let kind of go back to natural, do some rock bars below and close off access. But the Forest Service seems determined to rebuild this, and this is a tall task. We've been advocating for this road to be left alone in a post-fire project because we felt like it would blow out again. And they've been ignoring us, and lo and behold, what happened back in June? A stretch of this road below here blew out after a storm event. So at the moment, the Forest Service is dealing with almost a $6 billion backup for the current road system. So we're proposing, the administration is proposing to put more of a burden on the agency and the need for us to be maintaining more and more roads when we already have a $6 billion backlog. And with the cuts to these agencies like the Forest Service, which has seen anywhere from 20% to 30% reductions, we don't nearly have the capacity or staff to really handle these big engineering projects. And then one of the things that I learned recently from some California colleagues, many of you may have traveled into the Trinity Alps. The Trinity Alps are located in the Shasta Trinity National Forest, big expanse of wilderness and roadless areas, big national forest. It's the largest national forest in California, and it already has 5,000 miles of roads on just that one national forest. So it's a question again, how many more forest roads do we need? It seems like 5,000 miles in one national forest should be and would be sufficient for us to do appropriate active management and other pieces when it comes to forest health. And if you haven't seen Dead Center, just kind of show you the scale of some of these problems. Our conservation director, George Sexton, is standing right there in the bottom. So just kind of goes to show you the scale of what a lot of these road blowouts look like and what the agency is facing. I feel like we're doing pretty good on time. And so the next handful of slides will be really about what we can all do and how we can engage. And then I'll have some time for some questions the last 10 or 15 minutes or so. One of the things, and I think one of the more simple things for folks to do is check out our petition. This is a great way for you to stay engaged with KS Wild. Those people that do sign our petitions, when we submit our comments, we download this list. We include your name and your zip code, but that's it. We don't really include street address, no personal identification. But what I love about the KS Wild community is it's not just people from Southwest Oregon and Northwest California. KS Wild over the years has received support from people in more than 40 different states. I think people, even from the Southeast or Northeast or Midwest, they've been out to Crater Lake or they've rafted the Rogue. This is a destination and a place where even if you don't live here, you come to appreciate it because of things like wild rivers and salmon in the redwoods. And so I encourage you, no matter where you live and no matter how close you are to say a roadless area, this is something that's going to impact us all. And so I just encourage you, if you'd like to do that, scroll to our homepage, kswild.org. And if you just scroll down maybe a half a page, this little screenshot comes up, and you can also just sign our petition through there. And it's as easy as giving us your name, your email, your zip code, and your name is included. And we're trying to hit 1,000 local signatures, and we're about 85% of the way there. So that's good news. We're definitely seeing a lot of enthusiasm around engagement in this issue. And so that's one of the more simple ways folks can stay engaged is just try to sign those petitions. And then for us, we utilize that support when we're going to talk to, say, Senator Wyden or Senator Merkley or even Representative Bentz, who we may not always agree with. But lately we have had an open and respectful dialogue with them. So I think the more people we have on petitions, it just demonstrates to those folks people care, and we want them to be paying attention. And so that's one of the more simple ways for you all to get involved. You can also submit your own comments, and I'll highlight a few key points here shortly. But this is definitely one way that takes a bit more time and energy, but it's also vital because this is often the way that we get the agencies to do thorough reviews. And so there's a number of different platforms that agencies can use for comment periods. They've used what's called regulations.gov. And I actually prefer this platform than others they've used lately. But regulations.gov is fairly straightforward. This is the home screen that you would get to if you got to the roadless area page. You can do this a couple of different ways. You can go to our website and then scroll down, navigate to that roadless rule section, and then make sure you hit that submit comments. And we have a direct link for you to go to this page. You can also go to the other website, regulations.gov, and then there's a search tab, and you can also put in what's called a docket number. This is the identification number for the comment period. And so you'll know you're on the right page if you see this environmental impact statements, special areas, roadless conservation. And once you're here, a couple of things to look for. You can see on the left, right below the title and subheading, is a comment button. You click on that, and another box opens up. Your name, your address, your email, and then a box to either type your comments in, or you can also upload your comments via like a PDF or a Word document. And so that's going to be a bit more intensive to do. But it's also one of those things if you're a scientist or a researcher, maybe you're a retired public lands manager and you have a lot of information that would help the agency make better decisions against rescinding the roadless rule. This is what you want to be looking at is creating comments and then providing supportive documents. And we'll talk about what those could be here in a second. You're also going to see that on the lower right, it's going to show you the deadline. So as we all were pointed out, September 19th, next Friday at 11:59 p.m. Eastern. So you have until then to submit your comments. Once you submit, you should get a confirmation. A lot of text here. I won't read it all, but I just want to provide some insight and input to you all as to what we're thinking about at KS Wild. Myself and Allie and Haley, these are folks you might know on staff. We do a lot of work together on campaigns, whether it's outreach for business support, getting folks to show up for testimony. Allie does a lot of that. Haley does a lot of the emails you get. Um, we're all sort of focused on three different groups. There's a national group meeting, there's an Oregon roadless area and a California roadless area. And this is where a lot of the key talking points are coming from, is partners really focusing in on disputing and rebutting the administration's argument for why this rescission has to happen. Um, the administration to us has made it clear that there are two main drivers for this rollback. They're saying that we have to roll back the roadless rule to address the wildfire emergency. At this point, a recent example would be the recent McDonald Peak fire. Many of you may have overlooked that, but in the recent lightning storm, just south of Ashland, our closest roadless area is McDonald Peak. And there was a fire in there. And from what I understand, the agencies, fire responders, were able to do what they could with this roadless area and it not impact their ability to respond. And so this administration is clearly using wildfire and I think maybe using scare tactics to say if we don't build roads, we don't log more, we're all going to burn up. And I think that's misguided to an extent. And not to say we can't do prescribed fire or other types of things to limit fire risk, but building roads into every square acre of national forest is probably not going to bring us out of the wildfire crisis. And the other piece, as I said before, this is really about ramping up logging. This is about the agency targeting more of our older forests. These roadless areas tend to be where our older forests are located. And as we all know, hopefully a lot of us know, these older forests tend to be, not always, but tend to be more fire resilient. And we want fire resilient forests that don't burn as hot. And so that's really where we're focused on trying to rebut their reasoning, purpose, and need of this. I think for folks that want to make their own comments, there's a number of different things you can do. This is not us telling you what to write. We're happy to help provide some talking points. But anything from economic arguments, prioritizing quiet recreation or access over more roads, that's an economic argument. There's also this argument like more roads actually lead to more people interacting with those landscapes, and more people interacting with landscapes tend to mean we have more fire starts. So, this might actually blow back in their face if they're thinking more roads will help us respond to more fires. It might actually lead to more fire ignitions. One of the things we're learning, right? 85% of ignition starts are human caused. 85%, significant number. And there is a link here. Again, we'll follow up with some of those links so you can all see them. But a number of studies, whether it's OSU, Oregon State, Chris Dunn is a scientist up there that has worked down here before. He's familiar with Southern Oregon. He's done a lot of work comparing fire severity on private timber versus public lands. So we're going to utilize a lot of that research that demonstrates fire in our work. And then you can also talk about things like drinking water. American Rivers is doing a big push right now. 180 million people in 68,000 communities across the country rely on water that originates or flows through national forest lands. We know that more roads lead to more erosion, more blowouts, more sedimentation, impacting fish habitat, impacting the quality of water. So again, another one of those angles to talk about would be clean water and making sure we have clean water for our communities. And then outdoor recreation. This is another one of those pieces. The Outdoor Alliance is a group of folks looking at just how impactful the roadless areas are for recreation. 800 miles of whitewater, 8,000 different climbing routes, and over 45,000 miles of mountain biking and hiking trails. This is just letting you all know what to expect over the next, I'd say, 18 to 24 months. Um, a lot of this is dependent really upon personnel and capacity. Again, the agencies are sort of running at a bare minimum right now. Not only are we dealing with a comment period on the roadless rule, we're also dealing with a comment period where the Forest Service wants to consider getting rid of all 9 regional offices. And so really displacing a lot of what I would say is talent and skill and knowledge of these landscapes and relocating them to places that are far away. In fact, we have 2 different district offices. There's the Portland office for the Pacific Northwest forests. And we also work with the California office in Vallejo. Those 2 offices would be closed and relocated probably as close. I think the closest office would be Salt Lake City. And so we're dealing with a massive overhaul of the Forest Service. And so we'll see how this plays out. But we all know this comment period, the most immediate timeline, September 19th, next Friday. We want to we want to fill their comment boxes with tons and tons of substantive comments to make them and force them to do a thorough review. And so the agency, once that comment period ends, they have a long runway this winter and this next spring of reviewing the analysis. Next spring, they say that they're going to come out with their draft decision. So by the time next spring rolls around, probably maybe April, maybe May, we'll see. We should see them come with more substantive comments, hopefully. We do not know yet if they're going to be required to do their comment period or not. And so this may just be the only comment period we have. And they'll make a draft decision. Some groups may protest it. And then ultimately, the USDA and Forest Service expects to have a final decision on this by the end of next year. By the end of next year, we should also know what's going to happen with Congress. To me, the next election, so our primary elections in the spring and the general elections in the fall, are going to be those opportunities for us to really think about who we want as decision makers and how they want to work with public lands. Because when this decision is likely rolled out next year, at the end of next year, we're not going to like it, and we're going to need some champions in Congress to push back on this. And hopefully, we can achieve that. We'll have a few more slides, and then we'll open it up for questions. But we're moving along nicely here. Along with that timeline, I think it's also just important for folks to know, like, what else can we do? What's out there? And what are the next steps? KS Wild, as I mentioned, is working with a national coalition, folks that include Environment America, the Sierra Club, who else? Natural Resource Defense Council. A lot of the big green groups we talk about are on this call. And of course, they are in the ears of decision makers in DC. KS Wild also works with regional groups. We're working with a partnership across Oregon and across California, 2 separate groups, to do just what we're doing here, hosting comment writing workshops, sharing petitions on social media. Haley and I will be going up next week with some local media in a small plane and talking about this comment period and how to engage the public. So we'll be doing a flyover of the Kangaroo Roadless area with JPR and some others to bring attention to this. And I think like most things of this scale, those national groups, even groups like KS Wild, we're definitely thinking about what is the litigation strategy here. We have doubts that they're going to do a thorough analysis. There's strong indications they can't actually follow procedures correctly. So I think that's the biggest piece here is making sure we're engaged the whole way, holding those decision makers accountable, and if and when they slip up, this is where litigation comes in. So it wouldn't surprise me if we have a series of cases that we have to take to the federal court system. And then also, I think maybe a step or two beyond this is looking at solutions to this. The roadless rule is not congressionally approved. It's an administrative rule. And that has some teeth to it. It has some security to it, but it's also susceptible to rollbacks. And so, what we're focused on after this comment period, and probably through this year and next year, is really encouraging congressional allies to highlight and support the Roadless Area Conservation Act. We're lucky to be here in Oregon, where Senator
What?
Wyden and Senator Merkley right now,
Bella, I got it. Bella.
along with
Watch,
Rep.
wait.
Salinas and Bynum,
Here you go, Bella. Look.
they are co-sponsors, which is a good thing to see, of the Roadless Area Conservation Act. In the email follow-up, I'll be sure you all have a link to that bill language, because what it would do is it would codify the roadless rule and enshrine these landscapes as being roadless and unable to be developed, with those very few exceptions. And so we would like to see, I think, a good defensive campaign maybe turn into an offensive campaign in 2027 and beyond. The last time, believe it or not, we had a public lands bill where we secured some protections for our public lands was in 2019, right after Democrats won the last midterm election. It was a split Congress. Uh, Trump was in the White House, and we were able to secure some important protections in the landscape. The Wild Rogue, Wild and Scenic Expansion was part of that last bill. So we're crossing our fingers we can have better conditions in a couple of years to see something like the Roadless Area Conservation Act pass. And then I just want to go ahead, acknowledge everyone for joining us. Perfect timing. We've got about 10 minutes left. Ali, I don't know if you've seen questions, if there aren't any in the box, if others do have questions, I'm happy to take them right now.
Yeah, we had one question earlier. Let
Okay.
me scroll back. It was from Philip. He asked, can roads also be built from a Superfund mine cleanup?
Oh, that's a
If
good
you want
question.
to further maybe share more about that question, Philip, you can unmute yourself. Oh,
Sorry, actually, that was
uh,
a statement. We have a case up here in the North Cascades where a substantial, like couple miles of new road were built into a roadless area about 5 years ago for mine remediation,
Mhm.
Monte Cristo mines.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's another case where there is an exception built into the roadless rule. The Sec of Ag has to approve it, but they did in our case. So we still have this road that we were hoping we could get decommissioned after its mission was completed, mission being monitoring the waste repository.
Mm,
Um, but now that this is coming up, the possibility exists that inholders at the end of this road who, would love to use this road for their access to their inholdings
yeah.
would be able to use it for that, even though we've tried year after year after year to convince the Forest Service to close it as stated because it was created only for the one purpose, which was mine remediation. Anyway, I don't know how often that is going to happen anywhere else, but
No, it's a
it's an
great
interesting case
comment.
study.
It's a great comment, Phil. What we're dealing with actually, like what I've learned from some folks who know a bit more about the mining law than I do in our neck of the woods, is that the roadless, the 1872 mining law allows for a lot of access for mines. And so, yeah, it's not necessarily what we're dealing with in Southwest Oregon is that we could see it be a lot easier for some mining companies who are doing test drilling, where these test drillings are on roads that are not rehabbed. It would be easier for them to access. And the forest, I think, would be responsible for building those roads for them. So there's a lot that goes into mining in roadless areas. where that roadless rule does not necessarily apply to the mines. I see Les has his hand up.
Yeah, Michael, thanks for the presentation.
Yeah.
Very informative. Uh, who is it that will actually be making the initial decision? I mean, I mean, nobody knows what's really going on with this administration,
No.
and I think we can probably guess that if there are, say, Forest Service scientists or career officials who may be inclined to take comments on the merits and make a genuine response, that decision might well their decisions may not be the final Forest Service decisions. So
Yeah, it's a good point, Les.
we
We're looking at Brooke Rollins, USDA secretary, who will be making this decision.
and that'll so it's already clear that
Yeah, I've seen
it's
very little
all the way from
coming
the top.
from because I've seen very little coming from the Forest Service chief. He's just sort of going along. And so everything we're indicated is that this will be a decision that Secretary Rollins makes, which I think you're right in assuming is going to be way more political, because the record back in 2000 and 2001 was the Forest Service research showing how valuable and important these roadless areas are for conservation and other pieces. And so here they are a few decades later saying something the complete opposite. Um, but everything points to Secretary Brooke Rollins, USDA secretary, making this decision.
So I realize that KS Wild is as a nonprofit is
Mhm.
uh, has obligations with respect to um, politicizing issues, but I feel like I can probably say that our role here is getting comments in and getting things on the record that will then demand, if there's a following of legal procedures, that there be a certain response.
Yep.
We can expect that the current administration is not interested in actually doing what they're supposed to do. And so we're setting ourselves up to then go into litigation and say, look, here are substantial comments, objections that were never addressed
Right.
or addressed only facetiously or with bogus responses. That's our mission here, is setting ourselves up for that.
Yeah, you've hit that, Les. We're looking at making sure there's a strong record for support of this. For those of you that might be in environmental law, the National Environmental Policy Act seems to be new interpretations every week. So who knows what it'll look like next year? But I think we move more into litigation because it seems like all of these there's protests, which you go on the street, but there's also like written protests. A lot of that process is being pulled away. So yeah, we expect this to be political in nature. I would hope, that there's a serious consideration of what the science and what public wants. I mean, this is overwhelmingly supported by the public. But it's really about making sure that they need to respond to all of these considerations over time. I see
Great.
Larry. Good. Thank you, Les. Good stuff there.
We had a question in the comment box, Michael, and then yeah, Larry had his hand up.
Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to expand on, well, I'm going to kind of work backwards. When it comes to getting a strong response, something we all can do who are on this call is just commit to recruiting one or two sympathetic friends to follow the instructions. Like I've helped people over the phone
Cool.
find the right site to make the
Yep.
comments and provided them with talking points. And they can be brief. I mean,
Yep.
these talking, I know in the past, I've been involved in this trap for 50 years, literally. And especially in the last 30 years or so, a lot of times, all they do is count. The comments almost serve as votes. If it's substantive, if you really have some, scientific or numerical basis, that helps. That's better than
Absolutely.
that. And then you sometimes even get a response from an individual, but I don't know in this administration, it's
Yeah.
not likely.
Yeah.
But the other thing is the water issues, I think, are really strong now, and the way they connect to climate is really important. And you guys might all be surprised at this. Yesterday, I went on the EPA website, and they still have oodles and oodles of climate change information there that connects up to carbon sequestration, things that the forest does. Those things, I'm surprised, have not gone away. I think maybe they went
Yeah.
away and they've come back.
Yeah.
And I think we need to remind in the comments that we shouldn't just capitulate on things like climate,
No.
because nothing has changed.
No.
The only thing that's changed is the yelling from what certain people in Washington.
Yeah. Thanks, Larry.
And one last thing, when it comes to recreational values in our communities here in Oregon, we're talking, tens and hundreds of millions of dollars of tourism money for people who are coming here to hike. I mean, I've been amazed over the years. I've been hiking on the PCT
Yeah.
locally and just seeing the increase of international travelers who are hiking the PCT. It's like a thing, it's an international item. These people are dumping thousands of dollars in the local communities.
Yeah. I've seen
Um,
that with all of them gathering at the post office last month when they
yeah,
came.
right,
Yeah.
right. But I think what people have to realize, these roadless areas are a lot, along the PCT. And if there was more roading going on in there, this would not be the unique trail that it is. There's just this is just a few things of many things that I
Totally.
think we can talk about, and use your imagination and use your personal experience
Yeah.
in making the
Personal experiences,
comments.
especially
Yeah.
knowledge of certain roadless areas. We have over 80 roadless areas in the KS. There's no shortage. You may not know if you've been in one, but I encourage folks to check out those maps. And speaking of the PCTA, the Pacific Crest Trail Association, they came out today with some really great collateral and content and maps of the PCT and its relationships. So, yeah, this is one of those issues. It's not just a forest or a water issue. It's recreation. It's hunting and fishing. I've seen people from all different walks of life talking about things like, again, the water issue, water purveyors. This is an important thing. I don't know if Medford Water Commission, they get their water through federal, forest land. I don't know if it's roadless areas, but even Ashland, right? A chunk of the Ashland watershed is the McDonald Peak roadless area. So if you're living in Ashland and you like the water, maybe think of roadless area for that one. Allie, we've got a couple of minutes left. Is there anything else from the,
Yeah, we had a question asking about the very short comment period process.
yeah,
Has there been anything in the past? Has there been a precedent set with anything like this before?
well, I don't know if it's this, I can't recall a short 21-day comment period, from my perspective. But there are things like what we call categorical exclusions that the agency already has authority to use, which actually does not even include a comment period. So there are ways that the agency likes to skirt the public process, and they can do that through things like called categorical exclusions. But they're not using it here. They're not using that here. I think the short comment period is just evident of what they really think about the public's perspective. Like they just don't want there to be millions of comments, maybe hundreds of thousands, but like the longer you have that open, the more stuff you have to weigh through. And so I don't know that there's a precedent that I could point to other than we were actually surprised it was 3 weeks because all the intel for about a month before was we'll get 14 days. And I think we all just sort of rolled our eyes at that. It just kind of goes to show you what they think about public lands and land management decisions.
And then we have time maybe for one more
Yeah.
question, and then we will send, Mike was asking about some links. We'll make sure
Yep.
that we get those document links all in that follow-up email. And our last question is about fragmentation. How might the issue of fragmentation of ecosystems be articulated within the definition of roadless areas?
Yeah, that's a great question. It definitely impacts migration, from small animals to larger ones. I've been working a lot more on wildlife crossings, so I'm a bit more focused on like the positive impacts of that and ungulate species. But um, let me dig into that. There's definitely been some conversations in our groups about these key talking points. So maybe Allie, could you make a note of who asked that, and then I can just work with people who know that to sort of point them towards some research because I'm sure it's out there in terms of fragmentation of habitat.
Liz has had her hand up for a question for a while.
Okay.
Oh, hi. This is a quick
Liz.
question.
Yeah.
I was in the middle of making a comment and a warning sign came up about using my personal information like email address and so on. Should I not use these things? I thought it would be obvious that I would be identified.
Totally. Couple of different things to do, Liz. One is I think when you're filling out the form, they're going to ask for your name, your personal identification information. If you publish personal information in your comment itself, that's what gets published. So
Oh, I see.
just avoid like you could just put your name on your letter, but any personal information that goes into the body of the letter will be made public. So if you don't want people to go into the reading room and look at your email, just make sure you're entering it into the email line as so you get the confirmation that it went in. But that's what we have to be careful with too, is when we're collecting signatures. I don't want to be sharing my petition signatures address and phone number in the comments for people to go see. So that's what it typically means is just distinguishing between submitting the document and then don't put personal information in the letter itself, besides your name and zip code.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah. Anything else, Ali?
That was it. Sorry I missed your hand, Liz. I wasn't looking at everyone's screen. So I apologize about that.
Great. Thanks, Sean.
That's
Um,
it.
Awesome. Well, one more thing I would love to recommend to you all if you're in this area of Southwest Oregon, September 27th coming up, we're having our KS Wild annual dinner. If you want to learn more about some of the things we're working on, get together with people of like minds, enjoy some good food, local wines, local beers. September 27th at the Ashland Armory, Historic Armory. We are hosting our annual dinner this year. So it's a great celebration. It's actually National Public Lands Day, September 27th this year. There's probably gonna be some trail work, crews out and about, but if you've got that evening free, please join us.
And we'll send that follow-up email out to everyone with all the good links that Michael was talking about. And thank you all for being here.
And we'll follow up with links, maybe the recording, but maybe give us a couple days, but we'll get that out to you all. Thank you.
Thank you.